Hi guys, welcome back to the conversation with myself and Jenna.
Good evening, how you all doing? Hope you're doing well. I can't believe it's another week since we were here doing this.
It seems like yesterday.
Flying by.
Yeah.
Say hello, leave us a comment if you're joining us this evening, or if you're watching this back on catch up, just write a little comment so we know who's with us. That'd be good.
And I've got a question of so when people are logging on, can you let us know what you're drinking tonight? I'm drinking tea again.
I'm just drinking water this evening. Who else is drinking anything nice? Try and beat Heather's exotic. What was it the other week?
I don't know.
I can't even remember what it was.
Some sort of cocktail, wasn't it?
I don't. No, it wasn't a cocktail. It was some kind of tea.
Oh, okay.
Ben, hey Ben.
Is that you trying to keep awake, Ben? Is it?
Ben's drinking coffee. Anyone else? Wait for a few more people to log on. But this evening we're really excited. We have got another couple joining us. Hi, Leanne. Nice to see you. We've got a couple, Jon and Emma, great couple joining us. Really excited to have them with us. They've been in the church, part of the church for many years. Really involved in like the family connect groups and the youth. And it's just, great to have them with us. So shall we invite them in? Or what's Richard saying? Hi, Richard. I'm drinking tea but eating...
Sagaloo?
Sagaloo? Something lovely that I'm sure Tara's cooked for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's invite
Jon
and Emma in.
Welcome.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Nice to see you guys.
And you, how are you both? You well?
We are.
Doing all right. We're very honoured to be here. Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Welcome. Yeah,
thank you for
very
joining
welcome.
us. We have got a quick question before we get going. First of all, so we've both got a question. I've got a question first. How did you guys meet? So you guys have been married for a while now. I don't know how many years, but how did you meet?
We're married for quite a few years now. It's a bit of a vineyard story, actually. We were part of a kind of fellowship group. I'm not quite sure what they were called in those days. It was before Connect groups were kind of started, but a similar type of thing. And we were asked to lead one together with somebody else at the church at that time.
Oh, nice.
Emma kind of gradually wore me down, I think, and
Wow.
yeah, that was 13, 14 years ago, something like that. So it's
Amazing.
In the church. So it's one of the reasons we're really passionate about Connect groups, not just because you could find a husband and wife in them, but Connect groups are brilliant, and we're really pleased to be part of them and get involved in that.
Brilliant.
And
so good.
So you guys do a youth Connect group at the moment, is that right? And the family Connect groups as well.
We do, yeah. So we have a Connect group for the older youth, so from years 11 up. And we meet them every week. In fact, we've just been hanging out with them before we came here. And hopefully some of them are coming on.
Leave some comments, guys. Come on.
Are any of you watching? Any of Jon and Emma's youth watching?
Yeah.
If you are, just like put a little comment.
They said they would be.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Welcome. That's good to have you guys.
He's not in our group.
Who?
Richard.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely not youth either, is he? Let's be honest. Although he's
Okay. We hang out with the youth, and they are great. They inspire us a lot.
Brilliant. I have a question for you guys. So, okay, which one is it going to be? Okay, so what is the funniest thing that one of your children have ever done?
Ever.
Like
Okay.
the funniest thing that made you just have to laugh.
Well, the other week we were watching David Attenborough as a family, in group, and I think Matthew, he was 3 at the time, and he said to me, "Mummy, can you get me a drink, or I'll smash your head in?" And and he just said it so sweetly and innocently, and I thought, oh my goodness, who's he been hanging out with?
Did you get him a drink?
I was scared.
Thought I better get him one.
Oh dear. What would you say, Jon?
3.
Oh, I'm not sure. Our kids do various things that make me laugh all the time, actually.
I know, they're funny. You've got 3, yeah? 3 kids.
Right.
Yeah, so Lucia's 8, Joel is 6 and Matthew's just 4. So
Oh wow, yeah.
I love them all the time, obviously, but it's sometimes a little bit hard during lockdown. But no, they're great.
Brilliant, so good.
Oh, so good. Well, thank you, as you said, for joining us. So you've chosen 4 words that you want to sort of unpack a little bit this evening. Do you want to share what those 4 words are and sort of why you chose them?
Sure. So our 4 words are from 2 Corinthians, and the 4 words are "My grace is sufficient." The full verse, the sentence is, "My grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness." And we just wanted to focus on grace, really, because I think grace is a thing that we kind of, as Christians, often take for granted. We might look later maybe what grace is specifically, but the goodness of God, and God blesses us with grace. And it's something that doesn't really make sense. As I heard in one of your previous chats like this a few weeks ago, you were talking about peace and God's peace, which passes all understanding. On a kind of earthly level, it doesn't really make sense. And I think grace is the same. You know, it is not, well, I was going to say it's an amazing thing. There's a song about that, isn't there? But it is something that we take for granted, but we need again and again and again.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, I need grace on a daily basis, like in all walks of my life, like in my marriage, and when I'm being a mom, and when I go to work, and when things are hard, and life's got tough, and I'm run down, and it just in every circumstance, I just need God's grace, and so it feels like it's a bit of a hot topic.
Yeah,
we can often feel like, the older we get, we shouldn't need grace anymore. But do you know what? I think it's possibly the opposite. The older I get, I feel the more I need God's grace in my life, really. And
the more pressures you sort of feel. I mean,
the more we realise how our weaknesses, and how we need God and His grace, and His, as those 4 words say so brilliantly, His grace is sufficient.
Yeah.
So what, just aware that some people might be watching that aren't sure when we talk about grace, because we talk about that quite a lot in church, but if people aren't familiar with that, what are we talking about when we're talking about God's grace?
So I read a really beautiful kind of definition of grace that said it was free, unmerited favour of God. And I just love that you can't earn grace, you can't store it up, you can't bank it for later. Like God freely gives His favour to us. And there's a passage in Romans that talks about if it's by grace, then if it's by grace, it's no longer on the basis of works, because if it's about your works, then it stops being about grace.
Yeah,
they don't quoted beautifully. And it's so true. We can't earn grace because it's free and it's unmerited, and it's God's favour in our lives. And as our 2 Corinthians passage says, that free favour is enough, it's sufficient. So that's what grace for me is.
Yeah, God's kind of goodness is completely undeserved, I think, and I've felt grace kind of impact my life. God's grace impact my life in various ways. I think it can completely change our attitudes and just impact our life in really powerful ways.
Yeah, definitely. I find it as well. Like for me, especially when I became a Christian at 17, I was like, it was just everything that I felt like shame for and guilt for and stuff like that. And God was like just saying, it's okay, just come to me, and we'll deal with that as we sort of walk together. So it's like God deals with that stuff as you start walking with Him, rather than just you think that everything gets sorted straight away, but it's actually it's a process, isn't it? You have to keep accepting God's grace like daily.
Yeah.
It's not like a once. Well, you kind of got that initial where you have that understanding of God's grace, but then you know that you kind of need to keep going back, like you were saying, Emma, like daily, like need to have grace in loads of different situations and circumstances, and we need God's grace.
I can see that question there Richard's asked about, can you give an example of how grace helps you? And I think grace is helping us all the time in little ways and in bigger ways as well. And in that verse from 2 Corinthians, Paul talks about my grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness. And I think it's often in our our weaknesses that we can feel God's grace really working. I mean, something personal to me is that I kind of suffer from anxiety quite a bit. I think many of us do. Not necessarily during this linked to this COVID time. I know lots of people are now, but over the years I've kind of experienced that, and I think that God can often work through my weakness, and it enables me to kind of rely on Him more. I think I can think of examples where I've had to do things that have made me anxious. And there's a little verse in a little part of Psalm 121, which says, "He will not let our foot slip." You know, God's got us in His hands. There we are. He will not let your foot slip. I think that's so true, that God will hold on to us in all situations and in our weaknesses, and He'll really use our weaknesses, and His grace will be in that, and give us power to do things in His strength. Sorry, go for it, AJ.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I can so relate to that, because like I feel constantly like God's calling me to step out and do more stuff, and I'm constantly feeling like I can't do this, but because God's grace is there, it allows me to just step into that without being fearful that I'm going to fail, because it's not about me, it's about His power. Do you know what I mean? It's about sorry.
No, go on. Sorry, I butted in. I always like to listen to a little sermon whilst I'm running. John's got me into that. Who does that? I used to enjoy music, and now I listen to sermons.
I couldn't run like listening to someone.
It's great.
Not that I run much anyway, but
but it is, because if you listen to a long sermon, then you have to go for a longer run.
Oh yeah.
So, I was listening to a sermon from Jay Pathak from the Vineyard Leaders Conference this week when I was listening. And he was talking about that, AJ, that he was saying that when we're doing things and we're totally adequate for it and we're fully competent, then perhaps we're not doing the thing that God most wants us to do, because He most wants us to be a little bit inadequate, so that we have to rely on Him, and we have to access grace, and we have to call on His favor and know His power, because if we're totally perfect at doing it, then we don't need Him.
In that passage in 2 Corinthians, it's a great passage actually, 2 Corinthians 12, Paul talks about this thorn in his flesh, some sort of weakness he had. We don't know specifically what it is. We think it's probably a kind of physical ailment, but he said 3 times, "I beg the Lord to take it away."
Yeah.
But God doesn't take it away, but tells him that His grace, the Lord's grace, is sufficient for Paul, and His power made perfect in that weakness of whatever that issue is. And I think it's I see that the same in my life as well. I think we can often think, oh, I want to be like that person, or be perfect in that way, but I don't think life's like that. And I think God will use our weaknesses, and His grace will work in those.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And how do you think it might look to people who don't yet have a sort of haven't yet encountered that grace for themselves through Jesus? Is that grace available to them, and if so, how? How in their normal situations in their life could it be is it available to them?
Yeah, definitely. Grace is accessible for us all, isn't it? And like we said earlier, you can't earn it. It's not about being a Christian for a certain amount of time, ticking off the boxes, doing the right thing. It's free and it's unmerited and it's accessible to all. And I think the defining feature of Christianity is grace, and the ultimate demonstration of grace that Christ showed on the cross for us. He took His life for us, and none of us deserved it at all.
Yeah.
And He did that for all. He did that for me. He did that for you, and whoever's watching at home. And that's not unique to us as Christians and as someone who's been around the church for a long time. So we can all access it. I think it's just about receiving it and realizing that we have as well. So we can choose to ignore it, and we can choose not to walk in it. But if we start believing that we have access to grace, then our lives look different. We were thinking of a situation that we were involved in with some good friends of ours fairly recently. It was sort of a long-standing thing, and we ended up quite bitter, didn't we, as a result of it? And, you know, it went on for months and months. And Jon and I prayed so much about it, and we talked so much about it, and we'd go a step forwards and we'd come 3 steps back, and we just were like not really getting anywhere, and we were pushing into God, and it like just things weren't changing at all, were they? And yeah, we were just really resentful of it all. And then a few months back now, I was driving somewhere, and God always speaks to me when I'm driving. I was saying, Jon, I think it's like Jonah, where he put him in a whale and he couldn't escape.
Yeah.
And it's like me when I'm in my car. Driving along. And I think I'd been praying about it that morning again. And God just really clearly showed, like, said to me, like, Emma, what are you on about? Like, he just revealed some things in my past that I wasn't proud of, like you said earlier, you know, things that really drove barriers between myself and God. And he just like revealed all these sins, really, and then said, I went to the cross for you. I died for you, and I'm asking you to be a good friend and love them, and I'm not asking you to give your life for them. I'm just asking you to be a good friend. And I had this like overwhelming experience of grace, and like, I've been a Christian for my whole life, and I know about grace. I know the definition. I've read the books. I know the answers in Sunday school. Like, you know, I've been around the block as far as this is concerned. But for months and months and months and months, we'd really struggled with it, and we hadn't accessed it at all.
Yeah.
Jon got home from work that night, and I said to him, "It's totally fine. Like, I just love them so much," and my heart had changed as a result of this driving experience with God. And Jon just looked at me like I'd lost the plot. Like,
yeah, I don't think my heart had changed by that point. But the same for me. You know, we kept praying about that thing that issue, and the bitterness that was in my heart. I was so hard-hearted towards it, actually, thinking back, and it was really impacting me and kind of damaging me. But
yeah,
God's grace really worked in that and changed my views to it completely. It wasn't through me. It was through God's grace touching me, I think, and enabling us to love these guys. And
it's so good, isn't it? Like, it's so true. I think what you're saying, when we're reminded of what God's already done for us, it helps us to put things in perspective, doesn't it? And help to do that to other people. It's like freely give what you freely received, kind of. And we just need reminding of that, don't we? Like, a lot, I think. I know I do. But yeah.
And it is a game changer. And I think the other sort of encouragement for everyone out of that little story is that situation is ongoing. You know, the sort of thing that made us bitter in the first place is still happening, but our attitude to it has completely changed, and so therefore our relationship with them has completely changed and been restored, and we love in a new way now. And so, like in the passage where, you know, Paul was saying, remove the thorn from my side, you know, I can't live like this, and God said, no, my grace is sufficient for this. Like, my free unmerited favor is enough for this situation. That is exactly what we've experienced, because the thorn is still there, but it's different. Like, his grace has definitely been enough in it.
Yeah, definitely. So good. I think like so many people as well, like with people who haven't actually experienced grace, like if you think about it, like a lot of people who haven't ever had any contact with church or Christianity, they're sort of they haven't ever experienced grace. Some people, they've only ever experienced like judgment and like oppression of other people, or like negativity, you know. So
it doesn't make sense, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that God's going to give something for free, like, because he loves you, you know what I mean? So I think it's so powerful that the message of grace is so powerful to someone who has never ever experienced that, because not only have they never received that from someone, to receive it from God and then to be able to give that out to someone else is just unheard of, you know?
Yeah, and it's hard to explain exactly what grace kind of feels like when you have that grace, but I guess it is a kind of peace in different situations, whatever the situations may be. There may be storms going on around you and whatever it might be, but it's that kind of sense of God being in a situation and his peace and calmness.
And not necessarily removing the situation.
Yes.
You know, it's not saying that it's all going to be fine. You know, everybody's going to be healed. You know, suffering's not going to happen. It's about his presence and his favor in that situation. And, you know, for Paul in that story, he went on to, you know, he'd already experienced so much, and he went on to be so fundamental in the early church and for influencing those new early Christians, and, you know, and where we stand today, really. And if he hadn't have had that moment of his weakness and needing God's grace in it, then perhaps it wouldn't look like it does now.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Well, and we wouldn't be able to understand it properly either. You know?
Yeah.
We've got a question from Ben. So Ben has put, does grace basically mean forgiveness, or are they different? It's a good question.
It's a good question. I think the two are kind of linked closely together, but I think grace is different than forgiveness. Grace is kind of God's goodness working in situations, and that might lead to forgiveness, I think. But I'd say it's much more than that.
I kind of feel like grace is like the supercharge on all of those things. So, like, when you add grace to forgiveness, you get, like, you forgive the unforgivable.
Yeah.
To do that. And when you add grace to love, you can love freely without needing to receive it back, and love the unlovable. And it just kind of ramps everything up. I feel like grace accesses like a whole new level of these things.
Yeah.
So I think they're different, but they definitely sort of tie in together.
Brilliant.
No, that's good. And I like thinking about that verse as well. Was it the Romans verse 11 where it talks about God's grace it's not about works, it's not about what we do, it's about God's grace. So I suppose in that sense, there Romans 11. So if it is by grace, it's no longer on the basis of works, otherwise grace would no longer be grace. So it's like one of those words, it's hard, like you said, Jon, it's hard to explain, but it's just not dependent on anything that we do or don't do. We could be like a Christian and going to church every week, or reading our Bibles, or, you know, whatever, going to pray for people, and all those things are good, but actually that doesn't mean that we're entitled to God's grace any more than somebody who doesn't do those things. Kind of, it's like a God's free for everybody, like no matter where you're at, what you do.
Absolutely. I love that. You know, that is just so the gospel, isn't it? That, you know, that God freely loves, and like he is freely good to everyone, and there's no criteria for it. You don't have to be a certain person, you don't have to have a certain role or bank balance or color of the skin, or, you know, whatever it is, like God has it for all of us, and we're all equal shares in it. I just love that that's the gospel, that's what we try, and like that's the message that I want people to hear, and I kind of get so bogged down when that's not the story that people believe about Jesus.
There's no barriers, like God just says it's okay, you know. He breaks down those barriers.
That we can come to him with our weaknesses, as this passage kind of talks about, and that God's grace will work in our weaknesses, and he'll use them. You know, that 2 Corinthians kind of chunk goes on to finish with, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. And on an earthly sense, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. It doesn't make any sense at all, does it? But it's God's grace working in situations, and it's just, I guess we need to keep asking for more of his grace to work in us.
Definitely. Can never have enough. That kind of links to, I think we were speaking to Leanne a few weeks ago as well, and Leanne said hi earlier. I don't know if she's still watching, but we were talking about those 4 words, power to the weak, and it's kind of similar. Well, it is what we're talking about, isn't it? It's, you know, but it's by God's grace.
So good.
I don't know if anyone else has any other questions. Thank you for those guys putting stuff up. just for us to clarify and to go through. But if anyone does, then just pop those questions up, or if you're watching it back and you've got a question, put it up.
Yeah, put it in the feed and we'll answer it at a later date and revisit it during the week.
So I think, just to finish, I don't know, like we've talked about grace and we've talked about what God's done for us. I don't know if, like, just really quickly, if you could summarize what the gospel is. Like, I'm just aware there might be people watching that bits of this are familiar to them. They sort of know maybe a bit about what Christians believe and Jesus and grace and all of this stuff. But could you just maybe, I don't know, summarize it in a few sentences if you can? Like, just what does it mean?
Mm-hmm. Maybe
the gospel.
Edmund can put up the John 3:16 verse as well, just to help illustrate that.
Yeah. So,
you start.
So, well, in a nutshell, I think God made us because He loves us and He wants a relationship with us. But we weren't, He gave us the choice to live our lives how we wanted to, and we messed up, and so He had to intervene in order to restore our relationship with Him. And so He sent Jesus, and Jesus died for us so that we could have a relationship with God. And so that's like the perfect picture of grace, that He gave His life for us. And that's the gospel. He gave His life for everyone, and He didn't do it because of certain people or certain wrongs or certain rights. So He did it for all of us, and there's nothing we can do to make Him love us more or less. Indeed.
Brilliant.
I think it's through the grace of God that we are saved, isn't it? That's the key.
So I'll just read the verse that says, John 3:16, for this is how God loved the world. He gave His one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in Him will not perish but have eternal life. I just love that verse.
Yeah.
It's the pinnacle of the Christian faith, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Emma was saying it's one of the things that makes the Christian faith different to others, really, isn't it? That it's this grace that's just free and unmerited that we receive.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That, as Emma said, it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
So good. Thank you. Just as well, there's just a Lios. I don't know how to say that. Is she one of your youth? There's a comment. Grace is free and unmerited favour. I don't know if Ben could pop that up. Yes, thank you. Hi, thank you for joining us. So they've written, grace is the free and unmerited favour of God as manifested in the salvation of sinners and the bestowing of blessing.
Wow.
Cool. Love that.
That's really powerful.
Thank you for sharing that.
Brilliant.
And guys, thank you so much for joining us. Like, you've been really like open and vulnerable with us as well, and just sharing openly with us, about grace, and it's been brilliant hearing from you. So do you guys mind just praying to close? Is that all right? Either both or one of you, whatever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Father, we thank You for Your grace, Lord. We thank You that it is free, that we don't deserve it, but you pour it out on us, and we ask for more of that in our lives, Father. For us, for Jenna and AJ, for others listening, Lord, I'm sure we can think of situations where we need Your grace, and we need it to change us and to change lives, and we ask for more of that, Father.
Yeah, thank You, God. Thank You, Lord, that Your grace is a game changer. And Lord, I pray for anyone watching now that, Lord, whatever the thorn in their flesh is, whether it's health or mental health or financial problems or relational problems, or whatever the thorn is, Lord, I pray that, Lord, that they would see Your grace in it. Lord, they would know that Your grace is sufficient. And Lord, for anyone who's not received it before, I just pray that you would change their lives tonight.
Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
I just want to give a little shout out to Sam TC, because I saw him on the feed. And
is he one of your youth?
He's one of my youth.
Oh, there, look, me. Hi, guys.
Well done, guys.
Quality, so it makes a change.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much,
thank
guys.
You. Take care.
Bye.
That was so cool, wasn't it? So
really
good. Love chatting to those guys. Brilliant. Thank you guys for joining us as well. It's lovely to have you here. And again, if you're watching us on Catch Up, we'll be back next Wednesday to look at another 4 words.
Lydia Jacobs. Hey, what about my mention?
Hi, Lydia.
Yeah, we'll shout out Lydia.
Hey.
Yeah.
Another one of your youth there.
That's it.
So good to have you guys join us.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, next week we've got the lovely Megan joining us, and she's going to be looking at the 4 words: be still and know, which is exciting. Be still and know.
Can you finish the last bit of the verse off? That's your challenge for next week. Yeah.
So we will see you then. Have a great week. Take care.
All the best, guys. See ya.